Despite the fact that these two teams matched up just several weeks ago, it feels like it's been a lot longer, and several major changes have occurred since then. This Saturday, the Ravens will take on their division rivals, the Pittsburgh Steelers, at M&T Bank Stadium. During their first matchup in Pittsburgh, the title of the division was on the line, and on Saturday it will be again, because if the Ravens lose, the Steelers officially clinch the AFC North title. But like I said, several things have changed since these two teams last met, and during this Week 16 preview, I'm going to go through not only the changes, but everything else to be on the lookout for in what is right now the most important game of the season for the Baltimore Ravens. Let's get to it. Welcome in, everyone. This is Jordan with Ravens Flash Report, and if you're excited about this AFC North rematch, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe down below and turn notifications on if you're new around here, and put your thoughts and score predictions for Saturday's game down in the comment section. So, the first and potentially biggest change between these two teams since their last meeting is the overall health of the players. In Week 11, when these two teams faced each other, both were missing a key defensive player. The Steelers were without linebacker Alex Highsmith, and the Ravens were without defensive lineman Michael Pierce. While both of these players are back in the lineup and had impactful games just this past Sunday, there is a possibility that the Steelers may be in an even worse spot injury-wise for this rematch on Saturday. Potentially, the Steelers could be without safety Deshaun Elliott, wide receiver George Pickens, and the leader of their defense, linebacker TJ Watt, though that remains to be seen. The Ravens, on the other hand, are coming into this game almost as healthy as they can be, with the only players potentially missing the game being wide receiver Nelson Aguilar and cornerback Jalen Armour-Davis. The other changes we're going to take a look at is, of course, how the teams have played in between Week 11 and now in Week 16, starting out with the Steelers. On offense, they certainly have scored more points since we last saw them, but 44 of those 103 points they've put up since before our first meeting came against the Cincinnati Tiger Bees in Week 13. Unsurprisingly, this Mike Tomlin-led team has kept their turnovers low all season, and Russell Wilson has only thrown one interception since we last saw them. On defense, they've allowed a few more points than before, and that stems from them allowing 3 of their last 4 opponents to score 24 points or more against them, as their defense has allowed an average of 25.75 over their last 4 weeks. However, despite the slight drop-off in points allowed, the Steelers have been able to double down on their ability to force turnovers in the last 4 weeks, but of course, facing Jameis Winston twice will do that for you. The Browns gave up 6 turnovers in their 2 games facing the Steelers. Looking at the passing numbers, we see that not much has changed as the amount of passing touchdowns and interceptions stay low for the Steelers. The pass defense has also retained its bend-but-don't-break style, allowing more yards on average than before and more touchdowns, but, as we stated, increasing their turnover margin by quite a bit. And finally, we get to the bread and butter of the Steelers team, the run game. Overall, they have maintained their effort to focus on running the ball as their second most in the league, albeit to a lesser effect than before in both yards produced as well as touchdowns scored. On run defense, they also remained stout in their yardage allowed, but yielded more points on the ground than before during the lead-up to our first meeting against them. When it comes to the Ravens' overall stats, they have also remained a highly effective offense while continuing to tinker and polish those imperfections we all see from week-to-week basis. They continue to play mostly clean football from a turnover standpoint, and putting up fair to great offensive numbers depending on the teams they have played. Their efficiency in the passing game continues to be one of the most impressive things about this team, and the way that Lamar Jackson has improved even from his MVP season last year makes this one of the most dangerous offenses in the NFL. We'll delve a bit deeper into what Lamar has done this season in a bit, but suffice it to say that he is by far the most impactful and consistent element in this Ravens offense, and I look forward to seeing what he and Todd Monken have focused on to deal with the Steelers' defense that has been one of the few proverbial monkeys on Lamar's back throughout his career. One of the focuses this offense has certainly had this season is getting as many impactful playmakers involved as possible, and that aspect on this team comes from Todd Monken's philosophy of making a weapon out of every player you have to cause hesitation and second-guessing by opposing defenses. And based on how many players have been able to have an impact when given the chance, I would say that it's working. That almost element of surprise part of Monken's play calling has to continue to show up, both in this game on Saturday and over the final 2 games of the regular season, as well as into the postseason. Complacency and predictability would be the death of this team based on what we've seen when they face top-tier defenses and especially defensive lines. If Monken and Lamar can continue to make every offensive skill player, Lamar included, relevant and perceivable threats on any given play, that will keep defenses guessing and allow Baltimore to gain the advantage more often than not, which is something that will prove crucial in the final stretch of the season. On the ground, the Ravens continued to be an extremely effective team, averaging 168 yards per game over their last four. That average includes the first matchup with the Steelers, where they had 124 yards, which is tied for their second lowest total on the season, along with the first Browns game. If the offensive line can provide Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, and Justice Hill running lanes, or at least some yards before contact against this Steelers defensive front, it will help immensely in getting the run game going and provide a better balance in play calling throughout the game, making things a bit easier for both the players as well as Todd Monken. The passing game is where the Ravens will have to see the most improvement from when they last saw Pittsburgh, where Lamar had his worst passing game of the season, not only from a pass rating standpoint, but also from an accuracy standpoint as well. Luckily for Ravens fans, Lamar is back to playing at his MVP form, and while some may say that when teams play each other is not always relevant, I think what is relevant is that the last time we played the Steelers, we were in Pittsburgh, having gone 11 straight weeks without a bye, and they were 2 weeks removed from their own bye week, as we will be for this matchup, this time in Baltimore. With Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, Isaiah Likely, and of course Zay Flowers exposing opposing defenses and firing on all cylinders all over the field, I am naturally expecting to see a much improved performance this Saturday. Lamar and this passing offense are not only having the best season that we've seen from the Baltimore Ravens franchise in their near 30-year history, but also the best season of Lamar Jackson's career from a raw numbers perspective. In many metrics, Lamar has improved or is on pace to reach record-setting numbers on the back of his second MVP season, which now, incredibly, looks somewhat less impressive with what Lamar has done this year. But let's switch tracks here and take a look at where the Ravens' defense sits and how their much-needed improvements and personnel changes put them in a great position for this game. They are allowing a lower average points per game than before and have averaged less than 20 points per game over their last four, which includes the previous Steelers game. In the passing game, the Ravens have continued to improve against their opponents since cutting safety Eddie Jackson and benching safety Marcus Williams in favor of Barbarius Washington and keeping Kyle Hamilton in a more traditional safety role. This last change is the one that cornerback Marlon Humphrey claims has had the biggest and most helpful impact of all. In weeks 1 through 10, the Ravens defense gave up 2,949 passing yards, which comes out to almost exactly 295 passing yards per game, and having only 2 games where they allowed fewer than 200 yards per game. But in weeks 11 through 15, the Ravens have only allowed 676 total passing yards over 4 games, which is an average of 169 passing yards per game, and have only allowed 1 game where they allowed over 200 yards passing during that span. The Ravens' rushing defense continues to be one of the best in the league, allowing the fewest total yards as well as the fewest yards per attempt. Keeping that in mind, the Steelers did tie for the 3rd highest amount of rushing yards allowed in a game against the Ravens this season. Though it is more important to remember, as I stated in the beginning, that defensive lineman Michael Pierce did not play in that game, and with him and Travis Jones in there together, I don't see Najee Harris or Jaylen Warren doing much up the middle on the field. But let's talk about one of the most important aspects of this defense for this game in particular, the pass rush. To put it simply, the Ravens defense needs to either pressure, hit, or sack Russell Wilson on every single drop back he has on Saturday. With everyone on our defensive line healthy, I'm looking for a lot of pressure on Wilson to come up through the middle from either Nnamdi Madubuike or Travis Jones. If the interior pressure can force Wilson outside the pocket, we need Kyle Van Noy, Odafe Owe, and Tavius Robinson to finish the job by wrapping Wilson up and bringing him down. Too many times this season, Ravens defenders have allowed a sack to slip through their fingers, and it hasn't always been on mobile or athletic quarterbacks like Josh Allen. How well the Steelers' offense does against our defense will show up in how hard we make Russell Wilson's day with throwing the ball. A topic that I rarely have to bring up, as it hasn't been a major problem before this season, is special teams. And while we are all painfully aware of the inconsistent play from Justin Tucker and Jordan Stout, who will both definitely play a big part in this matchup, there's another area for this Ravens special teams that has been extremely underwhelming and hardly anyone is talking about it: the return game. Whether these struggles have come from the loss of Devin Duvernay or the new kickoff rules, the simple fact is that the Ravens have not adapted as quickly as they need to. Having said that, I was at the game against the Giants this past Sunday, and it was clear that the Ravens had been working on their return game over the bye week, as they showed much more success than in any other game this season. It may not make a huge difference in this week's game against the Steelers, but there have certainly been improvements, and as we all know, you take any extra yards you can get in a divisional game. The Ravens have an opportunity in this game to not only get their 10th win of the season and put their hat back in the race to win the division, but they also have a chance to continue to build momentum towards the postseason. Many fans are concerned that the Ravens got too hot too early, peaking towards the middle of the season. But with the changes that we've seen from our defense, the amount of healthy players this roster currently has, and the bye week so late in the season, the Ravens have an opportunity to reignite themselves and get hot again on their way into the postseason. But in order to build that momentum and stay hot, they need to beat the Steelers on Saturday, a condition that I believe they will meet with a final score of 31-21 Ravens. If you've enjoyed this Week 16 preview, go ahead and give the video a like. If you're new around here, go ahead and subscribe, and click on the notification bell to be updated when I put out new videos. And don't forget to comment your thoughts on this matchup in your final score prediction down in the comments section below. As always, guys, stay safe out there, and go Ravens.